We continue now at the top of Daf Zayin and Beis in Meseches Gittin. This is Gittin Daf 7b. And the previous summit, the Gemara was darshaning a pasuk in Nachum that the pasuk has to do with giving tzedakah, giving charity. And the Gemara continues to darshan the pasuk. The end of the pasuk is V'inisich lo anech od. And though I have afflicted you, I will no longer afflict you. And the Gemara darshans as follows: V'inisich. What does it mean? V'inisich. Amar Marzutra says, Afilu ani hamisparnis min tzedakah. What it means when a poor person who is supported from tzedakah, yasa tzedakah, that ani should give tzedakah. Lo enech od. And again, what does the pasuk mean when it goes on to say lo enech od, which literally translates as I will no longer afflict you? Tani Rav Yosef taught, Shuv ein marin lo simone anias. What it means is if the person gives tzedakah, so then Shuv ein marin lo, he will no longer experience simone anias, signs of anias. We will no longer show him signs of poverty. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Rabbi Yehuda Omer me Rekem lemizrach v'chulu. Rabbi Yehuda says from Rekem into the east. Again, Rabbi Yehuda is giving the borders of Eretz Yisrael, what's considered outside of Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara says Lememra da'ako tzvona de'Eretz Yisrael kaima. Does our Mishnah mean to say that Akko is to the north of Eretz Yisrael? And Rashi says Lememra da'ako l'tzvona de'Eretz Yisrael kaima besof hatzafan, meaning is Akko really at the end, so to speak, the northernmost part of Eretz Yisrael? Uriminu, but we have the following contradiction, and this comes from the Tosefta. Let's say a person is walking from Akko to Chaziv, miyamino lemizrach haderech tameya, from his right to the east. So that part of the road is considered to be tamei mishum eretz ha'amim, because it's considered to be the land of the nations, meaning it's considered to be outside the borders of Eretz Yisrael. Upetura min ha'maiser min ha'shvias, and it's pater from maiser, and it's pater from shvias, from the laws of the Shemitah year. Ad sheyodea loch chayeves, unless you know that area happens to be obligated. And mismolo l'mayrev, but again, if he's walking along this path, so from his left towards the west, so then haderech tahora, that area, that road is going to be pure, mishum eretz ha'amim, in terms of eretz ha'amim, meaning that's considered Eretz Yisrael. V'chayeves b'maiser v'shvias, it's chayev in maiser and shvias, ad sheyodea lach shi patur, unless you know otherwise, unless you know that it's pater. And Rashi explains, miyamino lemizrach haderech, from his right to the east of the road. And Rashi says, hashta mashmalon. Right now we think what this means is as follows. The Akko kaima begvul mizracha shel Eretz Yisrael. That Akko is on the eastern border of Eretz Yisrael. Mashach mimiksoat tzefonis yomo yomayim. And it's 1 or 2 days lower than the northernmost part, meaning lower than the northeastern part. Letzad Adoram, it's a little towards the south. Uchziv b'miksoa mizrachis tzefonis. And we think Ziv is like at the boundary, at the northeast border of Eretz Yisrael. V'derech ha'mehalechas me'Akko l'chziv. So therefore, if a person is walking from Akko to Chaziv, so what he's really walking over here, he's walking northward along the eastern border of Eretz Yisrael. So hayagvul mizrach le'Eretz Yisrael hilkach kishmahalech me'Akko l'chziv dahainu midarm l'tzafon. When he's walking from south to north, have a yemino lemizrachis haderech. So therefore, his right is going to be to the east, and that of course is going to be outside of Eretz Yisrael. So tameya haaretz shehi liyamin hamasila. So all of that land that's to the right, he's walking along the border from the south towards the north. So all of the land that's to his right, that's to the east, that's going to be Eretz Ha'amim, it's going to be impure. Misham Eretz Ha'amim, the Gazru Tomal Eretz Ha'amim, there's a gezer, there's a decree that the Eretz Ha'amim, the areas outside Eretz Yisrael, are considered to be Tamei, Uptura Kedin Chutz La'aretz, it's Potter from Meiser and Shvias because it's Chutz La'aretz, Ad Sheyodei Lach, unless you know otherwise. Kilomar Yolam Chezkas Yimin Haderech Me'Akko, V'yad Chaziv Eretz Ha'amim, meaning the Chazaka, the presumption is, if you're looking towards the right, so that's going to be Eretz Ha'amim, Elim Kein Tavo L'makom Sheyomer Lach Baki, unless you come to an area where an expert tells you, at this area, so the road curves a little bit and it's more within Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, at this particular point, so to the right of the road is going to be Eretz Yisrael. And the Tosefta continues ad heichan, so until which point? Ad kaziv, until kaziv, meaning again, kaziv is like the northernmost point. Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi Omer Mishamav, Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi says in the name of his father, ad Lavlevo, it's until Lavlevo, that's also the name of a place, and again, that's the northernmost point. And the point over here, as Rashi says, is Lavlevo Shemakom Alma Akko Meshuchel Etzadarum. Uchsib b'miksoa, you see from this Tosefta that Akko is not the northernmost part, that's a little more towards the south, and for example, Ksiv would be more to the north. Our answers, Amar Abaya says, Ritzua Naka, there's a small strip of land that goes out. In other words, really Akko is the northernmost part of Eretz Yisrael, except there's a small strip of land along the border that goes up a little more north, that goes up to Akko. And Rashi explains, Ritzua nafka liolam Akko b'tzvon ribua de Eretz Yisrael. Really, Akko is at the northernmost part if you would have Eretz Yisrael as a square. Elisha Ritzua Kitsara Yotzes Od Me'Akko Litzat Safon V'im Eretz Yisrael. But there's a little strip of land that goes a little more towards the north that goes to Akko, and that's also part of Eretz Yisrael, as you see in the diagram over here. So Akko is at the north in terms of Eretz Yisrael as a whole. Eretz Yisrael, let's say you have it as a square, so Akko is at the northeast corner. But then if you continue up, there's a small strip of land. You continue up along the eastern border, up to the north, there's a small strip of land that goes up to Kaziv. And the Gemara continues, V'yoyev Tana Simana Hachi, but would the Tana give a simon like this for such a small strip of road? As Rashi over here says, V'yoyev Tana Simana Atzmui Metama. The Gemara is asking a question here. Mi Chashiva Chada Ritzua Lasnuche Tana Simana Allah. Is one strip of land so important that the Tana would discuss the borders in terms of that one strip of land? And so the Gemara says to that, in yes, Kranami Yoyev Simana. Even the Pasuk gives a simon like this. The Chsiv, as it's written in the Pasuk, Vayomru, they said, Hinechag Hashem b'Shilo miyamim yamima. There's a holiday in Shiloh, Asher mitzvona lebeisel, mizracha Hashemesh, lemesila ha'ola, mi beisel shechemo, mi negev lelevona. So he said it's to the east of the path that goes up from Beisel to Shechem, and to its south is Levona. The Yamar Rav Papa, and Rav Papa says, what does the Pasuk mean? Lemizracha shel mesila. That the Pasuk is giving you a simon that it's to the east of the path. And so you see, even a small path is considered important enough to use as a kind of an indicator in terms of boundaries. Rashi says, Karanami Yoev Simana Ritzua Kagon Mesila. A Ritzua strip of land is similar to a Mesila. V'yamar Rav Papa lemizracha shel Mesila kamar kra. Rav Papa explained that the pasuk means to say to the east of the path. The Kaim Shiloh, that's where Shiloh is. The Hamitzvona leBeisel Ksiv v'al Karchach Mizracha Hashemesh HaMesila Kai, because it already says north of Beisel. So the Mizracha, the east, must be going on the path. Shiloh means Safon leBeisel. Shiloh is north of Beisel. Over Mizracha shel Mesila, it's to the east of that path. Over Droma shel Levona, and it is to the south of Levona. That's the meaning of the pasuk. And the Gemara continues, Tana Chada, we learned in one brisa, Hamevi get besvina kemevi be'eretz Yisrael. If somebody brings a get by a boat, that's the same as bringing it in Eretz Yisrael. V'tanya Yidach, we learned in another brisa, kemevi b'chutz la'aretz. It's like bringing it in chutz la'aretz. So it's a contradiction in brises. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yirmiyah says, Lokash, it's not difficult. Har Rav Yehuda, Har Rabbanan. In one case, we're following the opinion of Rav Yehuda, and in the other case, we're following the opinion of Rabbanan. The Tanan, as we learned in a Mishnah, Afar chutz la'aretz haba b'svina. If you have dirt from chutz la'aretz that comes in a boat, la'aretz to Eretz Yisrael, chayiv b'maisr v'shvius. It's chayiv in maisr and shvius. Amar Rav Yehuda, and Rav Yehuda says, Amosai, when is that true? Bizman shahasvina gosheshes. In a situation where the boat is skimming the ground of the sea, meaning it's shallow water. Avalein asvina gosheshes. But if it's not shallow water, if the boat is not skimming the ground of the sea, so pater. So according to Rav Yehuda, in that situation, it's going to be pater from meiser and shvius. And Rashi explains, the Brisa said again, Hamevi get besvina shenichta besvina. The point over here is the get was written in the boat, because al gadaydach devinaros Eretz Yisrael kamer. Now, right now we think the Brisa is talking about the boat is in rivers within Eretz Yisrael, and so the first Brisa said Kimevi be'Eretz Yisrael. It's like bringing the get in Eretz Yisrael, ki ilu mevia derech yabasha, meaning it's the same thing as bringing it on the land. Ve'in sarach lomer b'fanei nechtav, and there's no need to say b'fanei nechtav. V'tanyu idach, but there's another Brisa that says Kimevi b'chutz la'aretz. It's like bringing the get in chutz la'aretz. Shahanar ein lo toras yabasha, because the river is not considered like dry land. L'chol toras ha'aretz, in terms of the laws of Eretz Yisrael. And Rashi continues, and again the Gemara brought a Mishnah. The Mishnah is in Meseches Chala. Offer chutz la'aretz haba b'svina la'aretz. If you have dirt from chutz la'aretz that comes in a boat to Eretz Yisrael, v'zaro b'svina v'tzamach, and you plant something in the boat and it grows, v'asvina shel cheresi, and the svina is made out of earth, ve'en etzricha linakiv, so there's no need for a hole, im haisa munachas bekarka. If let's say you have something in a pot or similar and it's placed on the ground, kid amra b'menachas, as we say in menachas, it's considered like whatever is growing there, even though it's in a pot, it's considered to be getting nutrients directly from the earth, directly from Eretz Yisrael. So chayeves b'maiser v'shvius, it's chayev in maiser and shvius, shahanaharos shev Eretz Yisrael, hareim k'Eretz Yisrael. The point over here is the rivers in Eretz Yisrael are considered like Eretz Yisrael. And then Rav Yehuda said that's only if it's kosheshes, megasheshes bekarka. That's only if the ship is actually touching the earth itself. Shein hamayim amuka, meaning the water is not deep. And so you see Rav Yehuda argues that the river is not considered like Eretz Yisrael, and the boat has to actually be touching the ground in order for it to be considered like Eretz Yisrael. And so Rav Yirmiyah is now suggesting that this machlokus was within this Mishnah in terms of whether or not the plant that is growing in the boat is considered like Eretz Yisrael. That's the same machlokus between the two brises in terms of writing a get in the boat. That according to one brise, if you write a get in the boat, and again this is in the rivers of Eretz Yisrael, that's considered to be like Eretz Yisrael. That would be like the Tanakama that said that Chayiv in Meiser and Shvius, and the boat doesn't need to be touching the ground, it doesn't need to be shallow waters. And the other brisa which said that it's like bringing a get in Chutz La'aretz, so that would follow Rabbi Yehuda, that the boat within the rivers is not considered in Eretz Yisrael unless the bottom of the boat is touching the ground. But the Gemara continues, Abaya says, Hava ha Rabbi Yehuda. You could actually say that both brisas that have to do with Gittin are both following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Velokash, it's not difficult. Kan bizman she'ein asfina gosheshes, kan bizman she'asfina gosheshes. A very simple answer. One brisa is talking about where the boat is not touching the ground. The other is talking about where the boat is touching the ground. That's exactly the distinction that Rabbi Yehuda makes. If the boat is touching the ground, it's Eretz Yisrael. If the boat is not touching the ground, then it is not Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Zera says, Otzitz Nokov, let's say you have a potted plant and there's a hole in the bottom of the pot, Hamunach al gabi yasedos, and it's on top of pegs, meaning it's not directly touching the ground. So Bonu l'machlokas Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan, that would seem to be the same machlokas, Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan. Again, you have a situation of a pot and it's suspended in the air, it's not directly touching the ground. That's exactly the machlokas over here. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it has to be directly touching the ground, just like Rabbi Yehuda said, the boat has to be touching the ground of the water. And according to the Rabbanan, so just like the boat is able to be floating and it's considered Eretz Yisrael, so too if you have this Otzitz Nakav, even though it's suspended in the air, it's considered to be Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara says, Amar Rava says, Dil Maloi, maybe it's not true. Adkan lo kamer Rabbi Yehuda hasam ela besfina. Rabbi Yehuda only said his stringency by a boat. And the Gemara will go on to say that the boat is moving unlike the pot, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ches Amud Aleph.